Charli XCX, you probably know her. She had a brief stint of mainstream popularity in the early 2010s with a few big hits until stepping away from the limelight to work on more creatively interesting music. She got put back on my radar in 2019 due to a lot of praise from the needle drop, but it wasn't until last year when I finally took the plunge to listen to more of her music. 2024 was a big year for her as her last album took over the summer. So to chase relevancy, I'm of course releasing this video way too late. I'm gonna go through her projects chronologically and rank them relatively to each other and just share my opinions on them, so I'm not gonna waste your time, let's just get right into it.
They all love you, they all want you, of course they do, oh yes it's true.
14 is sort of her unofficial debut. It was an independent limited release that found its home on MySpace of all places. Funnily enough, it's sort of like the prototype for Brat. While the approach is slightly different with 14 having a different sort of dated EDM style plus garage rock as influences, it still attempts to bridge thoughtful, heartfelt lyrics with catchy hooks and energetic, danceable production. Its biggest failing is also its biggest novelty, which is her age. The writing is a bit I'm 14 and this is deep, and the view of her being a bit more mature than she actually is leads to some kind of awkward choices. The songs that suffer most are the ones that are most ballad-like or just try to be more lyrically focused, as that's not really her strong suit here. Her strength is really her ability to capture your attention with catchy hooks and chaotic groovy energy. When the songs are busy and more energetic, they sort of mask any flaws in the writing. Overall, the record sort of feels like a radio Disney release, which is kind of an inescapable comparison for a 14-year-old singer, but Charli brings a bit more edge and personality than most. Written and recorded basically all by herself, it lacks some cleanness which adds a lot to its charm. It's fairly weak overall, but it has tracks like Francesca and Machines, which are worth checking out for the novelty of it. It's not great, but due to its charm, I think it's fair to put it in D tier. Next is Heartbreaks and Earthquakes, the first of two mixtapes that preceded her studio debut album. This is a bit of a weird one. 4 of the 8 tracks end up on her debut in a more developed state, so in a sense, this and the following mixtape are just prototypes, practice for her debut. The main difference stems from the way these mixtapes are put together. They flow like a DJ mix, like a club set. The style of the songs are a bit more EDM inspired with some more repetitive grooves, and there's a great focus on the flow. Tracks are cut shorter, and there's a focus on transitions between tracks, as well as the interspersing of movie clips where people are talking, which sets up vibes for the following tracks. Now, individually, I find that these tracks are nothing too special, with some writing and performances that feel a bit overdramatic or performative. I like them, but they're very trapped in the era they're from. The production is a bit dated and serves more of a nostalgic role than being musically interesting now. Considering all that, I don't think most people will find this to be a standout record. You can get the best songs on here and more on her studio debut, so I think for most people this might even be a skip. If that is the case, I am not one of those people. I absolutely adore this project. Everything about it just works for me. The repetitive grooves and busy production is hypnotic and draws me in every time. I find the flow of everything to feel so perfect that I never want to stop in the middle of it. There's so many choices that feel like they shouldn't work, but each song ends up captivating me regardless. It's a pretty weird one to rank because I find myself constantly invested in this psychedelic world of love and heartbreak, but it really is an all or nothing project that only hits you if you really let yourself get invested into it without focusing on the individual pieces. It's hard to put it with some of the genuinely fantastic writing and production of her best work, but I find it great enough to put it into B tier.
It's gonna be a heat wave, the sun is shining through the clouds, I put my love into your mouth and I feel so high I can't come down.
Super Ultra is the second mixtape of this era in her career, and I feel pretty similar towards it. It brings a bit of a darker, more intense atmosphere that is accompanied with Charli feeling a bit ghostlier. There's only one song on here that ends up on her debut, Cloud Aura, which features Brooke Candy, who does a not so great job. It's a pretty weak song, but it fits much better here than it does in the album. Now, while I think that there are some weaker moments on here, some tracks are a bit stronger than the ones on Heartbreaks and Earthquakes. The production is a bit more interesting, and she seems to have a clearer vision on here. I personally just don't find myself getting invested in this as the previous mixtape. I enjoy it quite a bit, but I'm never as taken in by the soundscape and story as I am with Heartbreaks and Earthquakes. I think I can rate this one much more fairly, so I'm gonna put it in the high C tier. It took a bit, but we finally reached her official studio debut album, True Romance. Again, it feels pretty dated due to its darker alt-pop style, but it manages to mostly impress still. Despite having never heard most of these songs aside from the ones on the mixtapes, a lot of it feels a bit nostalgic. With its synth pop plus Tumblr goth vibe, it definitely belongs to the past, but it brings with it a charm that I can't help but love. I think this record gets a bit too much hate. At the time, it was seen as maybe too safe or derivative, and now it may look like a step down due to seeing her grow so much, but damn, these songs are catchy. Every single one has flaws in which I think they should fall apart, but somehow they almost always land. There are tracks that feel overproduced, tracks that feel overly cinematic like they're made for a movie soundtrack, and tracks that feel annoying. Somehow I like them all. The only tracks I really skip are Cloud Aura, which we talked about with Super Ultra, and Black Roses because I think it was in a Spotify ad or something. Overall, while it's not the most inventive record, it holds up with some songs that rival some of the most enjoyable throwback pop of the early 2010s. It's not perfect or even close, but it's definitely worth a listen. I think a fair place to put it is in C tier.
This must be love. Boom, clap, sound in my heart. The beat goes on and on and on and on. Boom, clap, you make me feel good. Come on to me, come on to me.
Next we have Sucker, which is really where the narrative of Charli being a boring pop star seems to hold the most water. Lacking any of the personality of true romance, Sucker is basically inoffensive commercial music. Many of the tracks feel closer to tween show theme music, with the closest being London Queen.
You know, I never thought I'd be living in the USA, doing things the American way.
You also get Weezer on Hanging Around,
Let's go out of this time, too hard, hanging around.
and there's a bonus track Red Balloon, which is probably her worst song ever.
So turn it up now.
There's really not much to say about it aside from the fact that it feels very soulless. It's music you might hear in a retail store. That said, there's a handful of tracks that, while flawed, hit in a nostalgic way, similar to True Romance, just with a slightly different style. There's a few songs that I really like, particularly Boom Clap, which I think is one of the best hits of the 2010s, Body of My Own, which has an infectious driving energy, and Need Your Love, which I find sickeningly sweet. I really can't recommend this album, but there's a tiny piece of it that I find very enjoyable, and maybe you will too. I tend to revisit the few songs on here that I like more than anything off of 14, so I'll give it the best I can, which is top of D tier.
Bitches know they can't catch me. Cute, sexy, and my ride sporty. Those slugs know they can't catch me. Beep beep, so let's ride.
Vroom Vroom is the turning point in Charli's career. After Sucker, she reinvented herself by teaming up with PC Music to approach pop music in a more experimental fashion. This 4-song EP was many people's first taste of what would become known as hyperpop. There are two main draws here, Charli and the production. Charli brings out performances that are indicative of her style going forward. She ranges from aggressive and confident to head over heels lovey-dovey, which I think defines most of her persona pretty well. The production is very forward-thinking, with its combination of old musical tropes and interesting sound design and song structures that result in something almost familiar that you've never quite heard before. It's a cool upcycled version of pop music. Most people seem to regard this project very highly, and I would agree that it's great, but I definitely think she's done much better work. I find some of it to feel a bit gimmicky, and the last two tracks feel a bit repetitive and boring in moments. This may be a little low for some people, but I'm gonna put it in B tier.
I'm a dreamer. Stab, stab out the beamer. About to do it big. Stretch, stretch, limousine.
Next is Number 1 Angel. I think Charli wanted to drop a hyperpop album, but due to some issues with her label, she wasn't able to, and instead dropped two mixtapes that would explore the style first. Number 1 Angel is sort of the overlooked older sister of Pop 2, but definitely deserves more praise than it gets. It's a bit more standard than her later work, sort of bridging the pop and hyperpop gap, and it might be one of her most consistent. There are a few songs that feel a bit too safe, like Emotional and Drugs, but even those are good songs. They sound great. The best songs tend to find some aspect that set them apart, whether it's unique production or song structure. The only real issue is its lack of bite. It's a very enjoyable pop record, and for most other artists it would probably be their best, but for Charli it just doesn't impress as much. The writing is a bit generic, and the production lacks some of the risks that we would come to expect from her. It's a great record, and I revisit it a lot, but it doesn't have the same insane highs that Charli can deliver on, so I'm gonna put it in B tier.
The way you look at me, I'm short circuit. You make me lose control. It's automatic.
Pop 2, sing on that thing. Anyway, Pop 2 is the Charli project for so many fans. It's the second mixtape of this era and basically transforms all pop conventions into something completely new. Before we get to that, I guess we can start with the lows, because the lows are low and the lows are most of the features. There's a lot of rap features that are not good, and I spent a lot of time trying to find a way to appreciate them. I did for a bit, but now I've come back around and think they're pretty terrible and unnecessary. It's unfortunate because they bring down a lot of great songs for the sake of being weird or for wild, energetic live performances. It sort of kills my hype for this record, which sucks because the highs are through the roof. The Her performances are the best we've heard from Charli, with her most expressive singing utilizing much more vocal range and layering on a ton of different effects. It's the closest thing we have to the movie Her, with Charli conveying so much life under a veil of robotics. The production basically does the same thing, feeling so textured and full of life with expressive sound design and bold structural choices. While there's stuff holding it back, it's hard to not fall in love with what's going on here. The highs make it impossible to not get excited for what you're witnessing, as it's some of the most interesting stuff happening in pop music. I think it's fair to say that despite its shortcomings, it's still an amazing project overall and deserves A tier.
Screaming out, when you're not around, when you're not around, when you're not around, when you're not around.
2019's Charli is the record that originally brought her back to my attention. The album as a whole is a bit of a puzzle for me. There's a mix of eccentric production and performances with more traditional smooth pop appeal. The songs that push less boundaries usually make up for it with immaculate execution, and the more experimental songs occasionally reach her highest highs. Pretty much every song on here is great, but many of those tracks, although enjoyable, feel a bit below her previous work. For a 15-song album, there's a few songs that feel like they don't really justify their placement. Skipping over the singular flaws on individual tracks you might expect, like underwhelming rap features or generic pop hooks, you might be asking if there's anything to like about this album aside from what I said before, which is some pretty great songs. The answer is of course yes, and that's the songwriting. Charli, much more consistently than ever, is open and vulnerable. The songwriting is very tender, with an emotional depth only occasionally seen on past projects. A good example is a song like Official, which could technically be made by many other artists, who I'm sure could do a great job with it, but I don't know if anyone else could make it this sweet. And that's sort of the theme with all of these tracks. There's some songs that are musically very interesting and some that are more generic, but they carry a consistent quality in their writing. It's an album that I'm not entirely sure how I feel about, probably on the cusp between A and B, but because it has some pretty incredible highs, including maybe my favorite song of hers, I'm gonna bump it up to the bottom of A tier. How I'm feeling now is a product of the COVID-19 pandemic. It explores her feelings and relationships through the isolation of quarantining. Due to the situation, the collaboration was kept digital with help from producers and songwriters, but no features. It's the most hyperpop album we get from Charli, yet unlike her previous work, she never compromises a song for the sake of weirdness. The songwriting is much simpler here, but somehow that's just what was needed. The writing is much more personal, and the simplicity allows it to cut through much of the harsher production. Overall, the songs are emotional, thoughtful, and relatable, while also being consistently bold and creative with some of her most interesting and catchy tunes yet. Now, if you've listened to this album, I feel like I don't really need to justify myself here. It takes everything that her previous work does right and turns it into a consistent track list without any holes. I'm sorry this section is kind of short, but I just don't know what I can add because I have no notes. To put it simply, this is an obvious S tier and in my opinion, her best work so far.
You struck me down like lightning, lightning. You struck me down like lightning, lightning.
Crash is known as Charli's major label sellout album. In a sense, it is fairly generic radio pop music. Following How I'm Feeling Now was gonna be a challenge no matter what, and I'm honestly kinda happy that it was this, as the super high experimental expectation for her is kinda broken here. People are pretty harsh on this, and there's some good reasons for that, as it lacks creativity in both the production and lyrical content, but I'm gonna say this is a pretty good pop album. Sort of similar to Number One Angel, while it lacks bite, it still brings a ton of enjoyment. A good portion of these songs kinda hit when you ain't got someone in your ear telling you that it's not hyperpop. There are tracks I don't particularly like, but the ones that I do definitely make it worthwhile. At the very least, if I want a fun pop playlist, I'm taking New Shapes, Move Me, Twice, and of course Lightning. I think it's obviously not her best, but I can't rate it too low, so I'm gonna put it at the bottom of B tier.
I'm just living that life, buying that car, classic, but it's still pop. I get money, you get mad because the bank's shut.
Brat. It was met with pretty universal critical acclaim and a ton of commercial success. It's probably the reason why you're watching this video. With this project, Charli took over the summer and went from a short-lived pop star in the early 2010s to a household name a decade later. Brat is not exactly hyperpop, it's more direct dance pop with some tight EDM production. Due to a lot of its attention, many people look at this album as overrated. Either it's nothing special or it's not experimental enough to be a great Charli album. Those people are missing one key detail. That doesn't matter. While you're looking for noisy experimental hyperpop, you're overlooking maybe the best damn dance pop record of the 21st century. Aside from a few songs, the tracklist is packed with in-your-face, energetic, groovy EDM production that for some reason doesn't feel dated in the slightest, despite harkening back to what I would consider very classic EDM styles. It's for the most part just the cream of the crop when it comes to mainstream pop music of the last 20 years that makes you want to actually get up and dance. Each song is absolutely infectious, sounding so bold and electric without any super experimental crutch to fall back on. The thing is, the production is only half the story, with Charli again leveling up her writing to a new peak. You get Charli tackling a much broader scope of topics with a consistent amount of depth. Her personality shines through the brightest on here, allowing her external and internal selves a chance to express themselves. With this balance of incredible dance bangers and thoughtful sensitive writing, it's absolutely deserving of S tier. that's my tier list to the best of my ability. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you feel so inclined. This video took a long time and the hardest thing to decide was whether things would get A or B tier. I went back and forth on a lot of things. I also didn't rank the Brat remix album because some of it's great and some of it's just whatever. But for the most part, I just listened to the originals, and so it feels more like a bonus unessential project to me. I guess if I was to rank it, I'd probably put it in B, but probably C tier. Anyway, thanks for watching or listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want, and I hope to see you in the next one.